All right, Shalom. This is the brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word, in all truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the name of the one they ignorantly call God. Yahweh Shai is the name of the one they ignorantly call Jesus. Bahashem is in the name. Rakah is spirit. Kodash is holy. Akyam is brothers. Akwath is sisters. Shalom means peace. And Yashar Allah is Israel in the ancient Paleo Hebrew. All right, I want to go into a lesson through the spirit based on or inspired by this clip from Lex Friedman and his interaction with a Roman historian. All right, before we begin, I want to start with this precept. This is Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. All right, so let's get it. Lord willing, this be edifying.
Could we talk about the role of religion in the Roman Empire? What's the story there?
I mean, religion's interesting because, in my mind, the rise to dominance in a lot of the world of monotheistic religions is one of the huge sort of turning points because it's just such a different mentality. I mean, it's very, very different where you say there's one God and it's my God versus, okay, I believe in this God, but there's an infinite number of legitimate gods. And nowadays, particularly in the West, we tend to view the monotheistic perspective as the norm. But for, more than half of human history, it was not. It was used to be the notion in a lot of Roman history up until about 300 AD. The idea was, well, there's just a ton of gods floating around, and maybe you worship that one, and I worship these two that I like, and the guy across the street worships the oak tree in his backyard, and it's all good.
All right, I want to go into a lesson on this through the spirit because, again, we're in a very beautiful time through the spirit where the Lord is allowing this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be brought forth in abundance. All right, and concerning history, what the Lord was telling us when you look at the law, statutes, and commandments, I want to get this example. This is Deuteronomy chapter 12 and verse 29. It reads, when the Lord thy God shall cut off the nations from before thee, whither thou goest to possess them, and thou succeedest them, and dwellest in their land, take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them. After that they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods. What thing soever I command you, observe to do it. Thou shalt not add thereto, nor diminish from it. Now you notice when the Lord gave us the law, statutes, and commandments, there's a big emphasis on not going after other gods, not worshiping other gods, having no other God before Yahweh Shema Shai. And it's because in the ancient world it was normal, as this guy stated, to have a plethora of gods, many gods. All right. When you look at the history, what put us in and out of captivity was following after other gods. Because Jake, in the ancient world, you had nations who would worship, as he said, many gods. And what Jake was doing is they would worship Yahweh Shema Shai, but they would also worship these other gods too, to kind of hedge their bet, because that was the normal thing to do in the ancient world. And that's why the Lord specified not to do after the manner of the other nations. Now, Rome is a perfect example, and it shows you that this is the revived Roman Empire because that was the attitude of ancient Rome. They didn't care how many gods you had, as long as you acknowledged, their system, so to speak. All right. This is why he's going to go into that further. All right. But I want to touch that point through the spirit because it brings life to the scriptures. Oftentimes, we were the nation that was separate from everyone else because we believed in one power. And we didn't accept the worship of any other gods. As a culture, that the Lord explicitly commanded us not to do that. And that's, you have to think, in the ancient world, it was normal to have that many gods. It was normal to have, you know, these different gods. But what a lot of our people don't realize is that to go after those gods meant to do certain rituals and certain things that were abominable. All right, this is why the Lord said this in the 31st verse in Deuteronomy 12. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods. All right, for even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods. So following after another god was to do abominable acts. All right, this is why you go here, just as an example. All right, this is First Kings 11:1. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, You shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. So when you think about going after other gods, in a modern sense, a lot of people think it's just having a statue in your house and, lighting a candle to that statue, but really, when you look at the ancient world, they were doing things that were abominable in dedication to those gods, all right, which are no gods. All right, so before we continue, let's go here. This is Psalms 96:4. Says, For the Lord is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. And this is why we were supposed to be the example of righteousness. That's why, let's get it. Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, said this is our wisdom in the sight of the nations. Because the Lord didn't require us to sacrifice our children in dedication to him. Whereas you had other nations who were sacrificing their children to things that are no God. Whereas you had these other nations who thought it was normal and acceptable to worship all of these, the God of rain, the God of thunder, the God of water, the God of the harvest, the God of fertility. The Lord said that he is one. We're not to do those things. All right. And the reason I'm bringing this out is because it was so normalized in that culture that what we were doing really set us apart as a nation of people, as a custom and culture. All right. This is Deuteronomy 4:5. And it reads, Salakia. Deuteronomy 4:5 reads, Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. Just worshiping Yahweh Shema Shah and nothing else was wisdom in the sight of these nations. Because by default, it automatically separated you from all the cultures of that time. When you think about that, it's powerful through the spirit, because in this world, it's normal to believe in one God. But it wasn't normal at one point. And even their understanding of the one they ignorantly call God is perverted. And this is why the Lord is going to set up the nation of Israel under Yahweh Shai, and out of Zion shall go forth the law and a proper understanding of the Heavenly Father. But this historian is painting a picture of how unusual it was to have one God compared to the other nations. So let's continue.
They're all legitimate things versus, oh, no, no, no. Now there is one God and only one God. That's the correct answer versus, oh, no, no, no. Now there is one and I worship these two that I like. And the guy across the street worships the oak tree in his backyard and it's all good. They're all legitimate things versus, oh, no, no, no. Now there is one God and only one God. That's the correct answer. And as soon as you do that, religion becomes foregrounded in your decision making much more. I mean, the Romans had religion, but it wasn't really driving anything, if you know what I mean. It was auxiliary to things rather than a central force. So for a lot of Roman history, you had
And if you look at our culture, you know, the culture that the Lord gave us, Yahweh Shema Shai is at the center, you know, because this is a perfect point that he's making, that in Rome, your religion, they didn't care what you believed in. Kind of like, you know, exactly like America. They don't necessarily care what you believe in. As long as you submit yourself to the system, they don't really care. That's not the driving force. Whereas what the Lord gave us as a nation of people, all right, he is the center of it. You know, Yahweh Shema Shai gave us the law, statutes, and commandments, which was our light in the sight of the nations. Real quick, it's Hosea chapter 8 and verse 12. And it reads, I have written to him the great things of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. So you have to look at the irony of it, that our people will forsake the Lord and follow things that were not only false, but were abominable. You know, and this is why the anger of the Lord was provoked against us as a nation of people. Because when you look at it, out of all the nations on earth, the Lord chose us as a nation of people and gave us a culture and heritage that is pleasing to him and that is completely different from the other nations. All right, matter of fact, this is Leviticus 20 and 26. And ye shall be holy unto me, for I, the Lord, am holy, and have severed you from other people, that ye should be mine. You know, and I love this clip of this video because it's really highlighting, because this interview is longer than this 11-minute clip, but it highlights what was going on in the ancient world. You know, that gives us a window into, you know, the anger of the Lord being provoked, as well as why the Lord put emphasis on not doing after the other nations, or not worshiping any other God, because it was so normal in that time to do so, that you could worship your God and somebody else's God too. And you could just have them side by side, just in case one of them is going to give you a blessing and the other one isn't. And you see that in Jeremiah. Lord will not bring that out. All right, so let's continue.
standard kind of, I guess, pagan polytheism where there's a bunch of gods. There's certain gods who are associated with the Roman state. And there would be prayers said to those gods on behalf of the Roman state. But it wasn't really, you weren't trying to execute the will of Zeus or something, or of Jupiter or Mars or anybody else. And in your private life, it was the same thing. You might ask certain gods for help, but it wasn't as much of a dominant thing in your own existence. So I think that's a real transition point where religion started to become so foregrounded. And as soon as you get the monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in particular, it really shifts how people start to think about themselves in relationship to the world around them.
Tom Brady is trying to track down our Hertz customer.
Looks like I just missed her. She's a Hertz Gold Plus Rewards member.
So Jesus was born during the rule of Emperor Augustus.
Yep.
And
Which is kind of neat that, really influential people in the realm of political.
So I want to deal with that part. Again, he mentioned, because one of the things that was custom, all right, in Rome in particular, was that every city had a patron, a basically a god for every town or every city, all right. And in the ancient world, it was customary, all right, to dedicate something to that god, so to speak, when you entered that town, all right. And this is why you have the controversy of things sacrificed unto idols, because again, Rome didn't center everything around their quote unquote religion. However, you know, they did have a system of idolatry like all the other nations. All right. And this is why there was so much controversy. All right. When you think about, let me get an example. Let's get the words of Paul and why this is so this provides context, right? So let's go here. This is 1 Corinthians 8 and 1. And the reason I was touching things offered unto idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth. And if any man think that he knoweth anything, he knoweth nothing yet as he ought to know. But if any man love Yahweh Shema Shai, the same is known of him. As concerning therefore the eating of those things that are offered in sacrifice unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and there is none other God but one. For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or in earth, as there be gods many and lords many, but to us there is but one God, the Father of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord, Yahushua HaMashiach, by whom are all things, and we by him. Which shows you Paul knew and understood the separation between the Father and the Son. All right, but again, it's putting emphasis on the one God because let's get a commentary. All right, I'm curious to see the commentary on this. I haven't read this one in a minute. All right, so let's go through the top of it. It says, now concerning things offered to idols, having dealt with their questions about marriage and singleness, Paul now addresses the next of their questions regarding eating meat that had been sacrificed to idols. All right, it says, things offered to idols. The meat offered on pagan altars was usually divided into three portions. One portion was burnt in honor of the god, one portion was given to the worshiper to take home and eat, and the third portion was given to the priest. If the priest didn't want to eat his portion, he sold it at the temple restaurant or meat market. The meat served and sold at the temple was generally cheaper. Then, as well as now, people loved a bargain, including Christians. All right, it says things offered to idols. The issue raised by many questions for the Corinthian Christians: can we eat meat purchased at the temple meat market? What if we are served meat purchased at the temple meat market when we are guests in someone's home? Can a Christian eat at the restaurant at the pagan temple? All right, it says we know. All right, so really it's showing you why this question comes up. All right, because again, these things were normal. It was normal to sacrifice unto these idols. All right. There was, I'll see if I could find it, but there was even a mention of sacrificing to the patron or the idol of that city for good fortune in some examples. But this is why Paul is addressing this, which shows you that the worshiping of multiple gods was always normal in ancient history. Us worshiping Yahweh Shem Shai and the Lord alone was strange. All right, let's go here. This is Additions to Esther, chapter 13. And I want to jump down to verse. I'll just read it. I'll start at the top. The copy of the letter was this, of the letters was this. The great king Artaxerxes writeth these things to the princes and governors that are under him from India unto Ethiopia, and in 127 provinces. After that I became Lord over many nations, and had dominion over the whole world, not lifted up with presumption of my authority, but carrying myself always with equity and mildness. I purpose to settle my subjects continually in a quiet life, and making my kingdom peaceable and open for passage to the utmost coast, to renew peace, which is desired of all men. Now when I asked my counselors how this might be brought to pass, Amen, that excelled in wisdom among us, and was approved for his constant goodwill and steadfast fidelity, and had the honor of the second place in the kingdom, declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world, there was scattered a certain malicious people that had laws contrary to all nations, and continually despised the commandments of kings, so as the uniting of our kingdom honorably intended by us cannot go forward. Now, I love this again because it brings out how separate we were as a nation of people in the ancient world, because we read these things and the world we live in is really influenced by, Jake. The idea of worshiping one God was given to us through Yahweh Shema Shai. First we had it as the sons of God in the garden. Then it was renewed, through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And now it's been introduced to the world in a perverted way. All right. But I'm saying that because in the world that was before this one, it was normal to have these plethora of gods. It was normal to dedicate rituals and to be abominable in dedication of these different deities, which would have set us apart in almost all ages. if not all ages, just by the customs and the culture that we had through the Spirit. All right. And by the time we got to the Hellenist period, it was pretty much over, because by the pain of death, Jake had converted to being a heathen, a lot of them. But then you had that portion through the Spirit that the Lord allowed to keep the law, statutes, and commandments and the customs. But it's beautiful because it gives you an idea of the environment that our people, that we came up in. All right, leaving Egypt. Egypt had plethora of gods. Leaving Egypt and then having to maneuver through the world that normalized idolatry. All right, so I want to continue here again. Additions to Esther 13:4, it says, declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world there was scattered a certain malicious people that had laws contrary to all nations and continually despised the commandments of kings. Why? Because in a lot of cases, those kings would try to get us to bow to them. All right, when you deal with the three holy children, that was the controversy, to worship their kings as gods. That didn't just happen one time. It says, so as the uniting of our kingdoms honorably intended by us cannot go forward. Seeing then we understand that this people alone is continually in opposition unto all men, differing in the strange manner of their laws, and evil affected to our state, working all the mischief they can, that our kingdom may not be firmly established. And you could see this sentiment with a lot of the nations that we were held in captivity under. All right, because this is dealing with the Persian and the Medo-Persians. All right, and we had a similar situation with the Babylonians, where our customs and our laws pretty much separated us from that current society. And this historical account through the Spirit is very beautiful because it I don't know, for me, it paints that image. It reminds me through the Spirit and power of by Shemal Shai of how separate we were as a nation of people compared to what was considered normal in that world, and how special that actually is. In a world where people were worshiping rocks, basically worshiping a sculpture. The Lord gave us the law, statutes, and commandments and commanded us not to make a graven image, not to worship the sun, the moon, the stars. In a world where that was normal, you were abnormal to believe in one God. Call Allah Yahweh Shemal Shah. Matter of fact, let's go here. So instead of additions to Esther 13, let's go to Wisdom of Solomon 13. And I'll start at 1. It says, surely vain are all men by nature, who are ignorant of the Most High, and could not out of the good things that are seen know him that is. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the work master, but deemed either fire or wind or the swift air or the circle of the stars or the violent water or the lights of heaven to be the gods which govern the world, with whose beauty, if they being delighted, took them to be gods. Let them know how much better the Lord of them is, for the first author of beauty hath created them. Man, and it reminds me of the accounts where the Lord said that we provoked him to anger, because the idea that the Lord revealed himself unto us as a nation of people, and for us to turn our back on that so many times in history, to worship things that were not, they were created. They weren't the creator. This is why we have been punished throughout history as a nation of people. All right, I brought this out earlier today, but this is Amos 3:1. Hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. Because imagine that, the intimacy of the relationship we have with the Lord as a nation of people. For Jake to look at it as strange, as undesirable compared to the idolatry that the other nations were doing. It's understandable why the Lord did what he did to us. All right, jumping down again, this is Hosea 8:12. I have written to him the great things of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. All right. In the NLT, it says, even though I gave them all my laws, they act as if those laws don't apply to them. All right. In the NIV, it says, I wrote for them the many things of my law, but they regarded them as something foreign. All right. And this is why throughout history, we've been punished as a nation of people. All right. This is Jeremiah chapter 2. And man, this is Jeremiah chapter 2, and I'll start at 11. All right. And it reads, hath a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which doth not profit. And this is why we earned this one. You know, this captivity we find ourselves in, we earned it. But again, getting back to the subject of the lesson, you know, what the Lord gave us was revolutionary when you look at antiquity and history. All right, so I want to reiterate this clip. I'll play another 30 seconds of it. I'll repeat these last 30 seconds, and then I'll get a few more precepts, Lord willing.
But it wasn't as much of a dominant thing in your own existence. So I think that's a real transition point where religion started to become so foregrounded. And as soon as you get the monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in particular, it really shifts how people start to think about themselves in relationship to the world around them.
So Jesus was born during the rule of Emperor Augustus.
Yep.
And
Which is kind of neat that, really influential people in the realm of political events and religious events coexisted. What are the odds?
I mean, yeah, there's certain moments in history where just a lot of interesting, powerful people come together and make history. And he was crucified under Emperor Tiberius' rule.
Yep.
Why were the ideas of Jesus seen as a threat by the emperor?
The thing that causes conflicts between the Romans and Christians is a little bit strange. It's all with this where the Romans had a tradition of on the emperor's birthday sort of saying a prayer, basically wishing him good luck. Okay, but technically it's in the form of sacrificing to that part of the emperor that might become divine after his death. So to the Romans, this is the equivalent of a patriotism act, saying, the Pledge of Allegiance or something to the country. But of course, to Christians, this is worshiping another god. And I think there's almost a failure of communication here, that the Romans just, at least initially, didn't quite understand this is really problematic for these people because they're coming from a polytheistic perspective where, yeah, everybody has different gods. So what? This isn't a religious problem. This is a political one. That why won't you send good wishes to the emperor? If you're a loyal Roman, this is something you should want to do. And many of the early Christians, I think, would have been fine with that, but it took the form of what they were asked to do was to basically worship another god. And that was the sticking point. And this is where I think movies have kind of warped some of our images of Roman history.
All right, so I want to bring this precept out. Of course, we know the laws, but for edification's sake, this is Exodus 20. And I'll start at verse 1. It says, and the Most High spake all these words, saying, I'm the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. And this is how the Lord starts off the laws, statutes, and commandments, to let you know how serious this is. All right, so I just want to go through that history. I got another article real quick that I just want to touch. And this is Tiche, or Taiki, or however you want to pronounce it. All right, and it says this. I'll just read a few paragraphs. It says, Tyche was the presiding tutelary deity who governed the fortune and prosperity of a city, its destiny. In classical Greek mythology, she is usually the daughter of the Titans, or sometimes Zeus, and at this time served to bring positive messages to people relating to external events outside their control. All right, it says, Yeah, I'm gonna jump down to the point. It says further, Tai Chi comes to represent not only personal fate, but the fate of communities. Cities venerated their own Tai Chi specific, iconic versions of the original. This practice was continued in the iconography of Roman art, even into the Christian period, often as sets of the greatest cities of the empire. All right, now jumping down, it says Tai Chi was uniquely venerated, and this is just an example of one of the Roman idols. All right, it says Tai Chi was uniquely venerated at Itanos in Crete, daughter of Arethius, whose self-sacrifice saved the city. All right, let me jump down. All right, nah, it's not what I'm looking for, but this is just an example. So they had a god dedicated to fortune. All right, good luck. And what you would do is you would offer a sacrifice for some good fortune. All right. And again, in the ancient world, it was normal to have a god dedicated to this, a god dedicated to that, and there was no harm, no foul. But as we see in our law, statutes, and commandments, this was strictly forbidden, man. All right. So I just wanted to go into that through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, highlighting, how beautiful this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is compared to what the world had, and how the Lord has really truly blessed us as a nation of people to have this. All right, compared to what the nations hold as culture, because now we live in a revived Roman Empire where the idols are not necessarily wood and stone, um, but ideas. You know, when you think about, there's a worship of Esau, Edom. All right, there's a worship of money here. There's a love of self through social media. All right, all of these have become idols within themselves, and people have been corrupted by these things. All right, it's 2 Timothy 3:1 says, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of Yahweh Shema Shai." When you think about the social media age, it's easy to see how this applies to the time that we're living in now. Because now Esau through social media has turned people as into their own idol. This is why you have such a vivid addiction to social media. People receive dopamine hits off of the idea of people acknowledging their existence. All right. And they've become, in essence, lovers of their own selves. So they've become an idol unto themselves amongst the other ones. But you have to remember the culture of Rome wasn't just having one God, it was having multiple gods. And now people worship money. Some men worship women. You have Jake who worship technology, or Esau, Edom, because it all really goes back to that. And the scriptures talk about how idolatry really leads to all of the folly that we see today. All right, now end it on that. All right, so let's go to Wisdom of Solomon chapter 14. Because people think it's innocent, but it's not, because it leads to folly. This is what it leads to. The society we see now is based on idolatry, whether people acknowledge that or not. All right, this is Wisdom of Solomon chapter 14, and I'm going to jump down. This whole chapter is good, but I'm going to jump down to let's start at 15. All right, and it reads, no, I got to start up. I'll start at 12. All right, and it reads, "For the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. For neither were they from the beginning, neither shall they be forever. For by the vainglory of men they entered into the world, and therefore shall they come shortly to an end. For a father afflicted with untimely mourning, when he hath made an image of his child, soon taken away, now honored him as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifices. And when you deal with Serapis Christus, all right, or Serapis, so like not the Christus is, but Serapis, I'll just get this real quick. Serapis is a Greco-Egyptian god, all right, a syncretic deity derived from the worship of the Egyptian Osiris and Apis. Serapis was extensively popularized in the 3rd century BC on the orders of the Greek pharaoh Ptolemy as means to unify the Greek and Egyptian subjects of the Ptolemaic kingdom. All right, and this is the prototype, if you will, of Jesus Christos. All right, so you see this idolatry all throughout the ancient world. And the Wisdom of Solomon 14 is going into what it leads to. All right, so let's continue. For a father afflicted with untimely mourning, when he hath made an image of his child soon taken away, now honored him as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifices. Thus, in process of time, an ungodly custom, growing strong, was kept as a law, and graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings, whom men could not honor in presence, because they dwelt far off. They took the counterfeit of his visage from far, and made an express image of a king whom they honored, to the end that by this their forwardness they might flatter him that was absent, as if he were present. Also, the singular diligence of the artificer did help to set forward the ignorant to more superstition. For he peradventure, willing to please one in authority, forced all his skill to make the resemblance of the best fashion. And so the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, took him now for a god, which a little before was but honored as a man. All right, and this was an occasion to deceive the world. For men serving either calamity or tyranny did ascribe unto stones and stocks their incommunicable name. All right, because in the ancient world, I just want to give an example. In the ancient world, they'd have temples. All right, and in those temples, you'd have these big ass statues, excuse my French, and people would go into these temples and worship. All right, I want to see if I can get. Because dealing with Roman history, there was a famous temple. It's called the Temple of Jupiter. Let me see if I can get the actual image, though. And these statues were basically looked at as gods. All right, when you saw how big a statue was, or whatever the case may be, people were basically seduced by this. All right, matter of fact, I believe this is an idea of what it would have looked like. Just quick. So just going in this, it says Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. And when you look at it, this will just give you an idea when you just look at the plan. This is how it was, and then at the center of it was a statue. And people would go in there and they would worship these so-called gods. All right. So if you look at this is a good example. You got the Temple of Jupiter, Temple of Venus, Temple of Mens, Temple of Bellona, Temple of Divas. So look at this. It's like a theme park of idols, just to give you an idea of how normal this was. All right. Now going back to Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter. Verse 21 reads, and this was an occasion to deceive the world, for men serving either calamity or tyranny did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. Moreover, this was not enough for them, that they erred in the knowledge of the Most High. But whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues called they peace. For whilst they slew their children in sacrifices, or used secret ceremonies, or made revelings of strange rites, they kept neither lives nor marriages any longer undefiled, but either one slew another traitorously, or grieved him by adultery, so that there reigned in all men without exception blood, manslaughter, theft, and dissimulation, corruption, unfaithfulness, tumults, perjury, disquieting of good men, forgetfulness of good terms, defiling of souls, changing of kind, disorder in marriages, adultery, and shameless uncleanliness. For the worshiping of idols, not to be named, is the beginning, the cause, and the end of all evil. All right. So what was looked at in the ancient world as normalized concerning idolatry, this is what it led to every time. All right, and this is why the Lord instructed us to separate ourselves from those things, to not dive into the ways of the other nations. All right, so I just want to go into that inspired by this clip that I saw. All right, and before I end this, I just want to get this quick clip. All right, this is from I visit this site often, academia.edu, and they do a lot. They have a lot of articles and research papers that people do on history and different things. And I just read this paragraph right here on page 97 from The Rise of Monotheism in Ancient Israel, Biblical and Epigraphic Evidence. All right, so on page 97, it says, during antiquity, polytheism was the norm in ancient Mesopotamia, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt. Indeed, Sumerian and Akkadian texts from Mesopotamia, various hieroglyphic, hieratic, and Demotic texts from Egypt, as well as numerous Phoenician, Aramaic, and Ugaritic texts from the Levant, the Syria, Palestine, all reflect a belief in a multiplicity of deities. Because of its geographic proximity to Israel, and because of the plethora of data, the late Bronze Age, 1500 to 1200 BC, material from Ugarit or Syria, is especially relevant for an analysis of the cultural context out of which ancient Israel arose. Major epics replicate with substantial material about the Ugaritic pantheon and religious practices. For example, are extant among the Ugaritic materials with the Balu epic, cf. the biblical divine name Baal, the Kurta epic, and the Akhat or Akkad epic with a wise man named Daniel as a major character, being among the most important. Various deities figure prominently in the Ugaritic pantheon, with El as the head of the pantheon, but with a superabundance of material about El's consort, Art or Ashereth, which was mentioned in the scriptures, about Balu and his consort Anat, as well as substantial material about Yamu, Motu, Carthor, Wasasis, whatever. But this is just showing you that in the ancient world, this was normal. All right. And this article really kind of goes into a lot of things. You have to eat the meat, all right, spit out the bones. But again, I just want to touch that to highlight the same point that was being made of how normal it was. Because he's discussing the Roman Empire, but we know that idolatry goes way back. All right. So with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakar Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and the sincere salutations to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Aquat, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.